with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today in a sunny day in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I like the sun. I don't like that the sun doesn't seem to affect the change in weather, and that when I go outside, despite the sun being out there perplexingly, and my mind cannot keep up with this, it is cold. Did that not just sneak up on us? Am I crazy? There was one day last week I did not need my jacket, and then I woke up and I needed my jacket. And what I want to wish, that's what I wish had happened, was that I woke up one day and needed a thicker shirt, and then woke up the day after that and needed a sweater, and then woke up the day after that and then needed a jacket. That would have made sense. That would have made more sense than what actually happened, which was one day it was warm and it was fine, and then the next day I needed a jacket because I was freezing to death. That's what should have happened in that order. Friday it was okay, and then Saturday I woke up, I'm Adventist, so I was going to church, and I needed a jacket. And then Sunday, my girlfriend was working at a festival selling oils and spa products, and the festival was nice, but it was cold. It was cold and windy, and the tent was flying everywhere. And what I want to know is when this happened. There's no in between. It was just, hey, good morning, Chattanooga. We're cold now. It's upsetting. That's all I'm saying. I'm looking for some rhyme or reason in my life as I hold on to some semblance of order, and there is none. And the weather is the biggest mocker of all that makes sense. The NFL is the other one. That I watched the NFL this weekend and I don't know what happened. I know what happened, but I don't know what happened. I know that Phillip Rivers threw for 500 yards. I don't know why the Chargers lost against the Packers. I know kind of what happened. Mike McCoy is overly conservative, and I don't know why they decided to throw the pass there to Danny Woodhead at the end of the game, of all human beings on earth, that's the play that was drawn up there, but fine. I know that Phillip Rivers threw for 500 yards. I don't know why they lost that game. I know that the Colts ran the most ridiculous play in the history of mankind on fourth down, only down by a touchdown. And I don't know why they did that. I have no idea why they did that. I was very excited about that game. I went to go watch it with my brother. We went out to Bar Louie to watch the game Sunday night. And it was crazy to me because, the game had a lot of hype. It was, this is the rematch of the Deflategate game. Colts, Patriots, there's a lot here. Tom Brady is probably upset about them ratting him out and his Deflategate tomfoolery. And you know what? Rightfully so. We thought the way the Patriots were playing, Tommy might come out and put 60 on the board. But no, the Colts played very well, made it a game. It was interesting for most of the game. And then, inexplicably, the Colts did this funky-looking play where the wide receiver is snapping the ball to some guy, and there's 9 players. They all shift over to the sideline, trying to catch the Patriots off guard, I guess, and it backfired. They weren't supposed to snap it. Chuck Pagano said there was a miscommunication at the end of the game. They weren't supposed to snap it, but they snapped it, so the play ran, and Tom Brady gets a 35-yard field to work with, the shortest field imaginable that you would give Tom Brady in a situation like that. And, the game was basically over from that point. The Colts continued to fight, but, there was no game to be had after that, which is a shame because Luck looked good. Coming back from the shoulder injury, he hadn't really looked good this season. He looked good, but I don't know what that was. I do not know. I know that the Redskins lost to the Jets. That makes sense. Actually, that's probably one of the least shocking things that happened this weekend. The Redskins lose again. And the Jets, who are looking every bit as good as their record says that they are, dominated in basically every phase of that game. What doesn't make sense from that game is you've got Jay Gruden defending Kirk Cousins. People are asking him, should we talk about changing quarterbacks? I'm going to go with no. You don't just change quarterbacks willy-nilly. He did that last year. He looked like an idiot. You don't do that. You just don't start up the quarterback carousel if there's no end to the ride. You don't do that. So I'm okay with him not wanting to change quarterbacks, but the excuses that he was making for Kirk is insane. He's saying stuff like it was windy, so that's why he threw some interceptions. Everybody throws through the wind. What is that? What on earth is that? What kind of excuse is that? Well, it was windy. What? What? What is that even? What kind of response or excuse is that? That last year, first off, the criticism is different for Kirk Cousins than it is for Robert Griffin III. No? That Robert Griffin III has one multiple interception game, and Jay Gruden says that is unacceptable. This is the fourth multiple interception game for Kirk Cousins, and it was the wind? I don't know what that is. That doesn't even make sense. This world of football that we have been living in continues to make no sense, which is why I watched the NFL over baseball this weekend, because there's more unpredictability there. That I'm so excited that the baseball playoffs are here, and they've been actually really good, which is everything that you'd hope for Major League Baseball. And I didn't really watch it because there's just insanity in football. There's an inherent insanity that if you watched any NFL football this weekend, or you watched that Michigan State game, oh my goodness, the punt there at the end that was blocked, and somehow the Spartans recover it and score the touchdown in a game that Michigan more or less dominated from start to finish. I don't know what to tell you there. That one, I don't know what happened. And the poor reporter standing outside that was saying that Michigan won, only to be corrected as he tossed it back to the station. Oh. There's the insanity ruled the weekend. And I think that is why football is the most popular sport in this country. Like, ultimately, that's why. Because you can have an entire weekend that looks like that. And it could be college and it could be pro. You have an entire weekend that looks like what that is. This is insanity. This is madness. Okay? I don't know what happened this weekend. I just enjoyed every second of whatever that was. And I think sometimes you get a lot more in post games of the NFL also, because of what is required of coaches to say. You know, the play that the Colts ran, the weird one, there wasn't supposed to be a snap there. They were just trying to catch the Patriots off guard, and instead of letting that go, letting the clock run down and just punting it, the ball gets snapped, and whoever it was that received the ball, I don't even know his name. He's number 32 for the Colts. Was immediately tackled by two Patriots, because that's exactly how that would work, because there's nobody blocking for you. There's no blocking. It's just the wide receiver and this guy standing off on an island by themselves, doing God knows what. I don't know what that play was. And Chuck Pagano had to go, well, I'm taking blame for that. I'm taking blame for this. I'm taking the blame for this one, even though that play was never supposed to have happened. They were just supposed to not snap it. But coaches have to say these things. I don't know what Jay Gruden's thing was. Coaches do not have to blame the wind for their quarterbacks playing poorly. No coach has ever had to do that. I don't know what that is. If I had to summarize the NFL weekend, and not just the NFL weekend, just football this weekend, the overall overwhelming summary would be, I do not know what that is. I am unaware as to what that could possibly be. Because the more that I watched, the more confused that I became, especially during the Chargers-Packers game. I'm watching Phillip Rivers absolutely destroy the Packers secondary. I mean, he was ripping it to pieces, and he was throwing the ball all over the yard, and there were 43 completions in that game. He completed 43 passes. He got 500 yards. No turnovers for Phillip Rivers. Chargers lose that game. And I can't explain it. They had a chance there to win it at the end, but I mean, if ever there was a dominant performance, that just went entirely to waste. And also, not to sidetrack, I'll digress in a second. I had Phillip Rivers in fantasy on my bench, and I didn't start him, and now I feel bad. But anyway, the point is, he played well. He was amazing. Wasted performance. I don't know how you rectify that situation. How does a man throw for 500 yards in a losing effort? You know, and it does lend itself to what sports statistics are, because simply having those numbers, and if you told me a quarterback would complete 43 passes for 500 yards, not have any turnovers, throw multiple touchdowns, I believe 3 touchdowns, and lose the game, I would have told you were nuts. Like, we cannot go based on pure stats on some of this thing, because again, it's a team sport, and it's a crazy team sport. It's a crazy sport, and it's probably the sport where the flukiest things happen, and we just take that explanation as it was supposed to be that way. Like, the better team won because they had the will or they had the heart or whatever. And it's just like, this is the craziest possible outcome of this. That Phillip Rivers goes 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 43 completions, and the Chargers lose. And so somehow the Packers were better on that day. And we go a step further. We go, Aaron Rodgers won. Like, we just mark win or loss. That's it. But what more did you want Rivers to do? Like, he's got this reputation of not being a top-tier quarterback. He's considered a top-tier quarterback, but he's not considered, when you have that revered conversation where you've got Brady and Rodgers and Manning and Roethlisberger, you almost have those guys in that conversation because they're great quarterbacks and they've got rings. And you leave Rivers out of that conversation because he doesn't have any rings, but he's playing amazing football. Is that not craziness? And while it's frustrating to have to be one of the Rivers defenders, because I feel like I am that more often than not, while it's frustrating, isn't that why we like football? And isn't that why last weekend was ridiculous? And why the ridiculousness of that all is far more entertaining than the 4-1 and 4-2 victories that we got out of the Mets, which, by the way, I said that if the Cubs win that series, I will shave my head live on the air, and you can tune into the stream to see that. But you might never see that because the Mets are cruising. I'm down with that. I'm down with not shaving my head because I really don't want to. Like, I saw it on the Twitter feed. I don't know what that. I didn't agree to have my head shaved. By the way, I didn't agree to have my head shaved. It just, the tweet just said, perplexingly, by the way, if he's wrong, he'll shave his head, clutch with Keon Rose. So I made up a thing to be wrong about. Like, I don't know. I didn't choose anything in particular. I just picked the thing that I was talking about. Since I happened to be talking about the NLCS, I chose the outcome of the NLCS. And I'm really glad that it's going the way that it's going so that I don't have to shave my head. But I'm starting to look back on that as a particularly reckless thing to do. That because there was a thing in front of me and it just needed an explanation, I could have just left that alone. I really could have. You're welcome, by the way. I put my hair on the line. I have a haircut that I like. It's very nice. It's mohawkish. I'm a huge fan. My girlfriend's a fan. That's really what counts there. And I put my haircut on the line for no good reason. Like over the weekend, I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, I hope the Mets win. I put my haircut on the line for no good reason. That last segment was really scattered, but you know what? So was the whole weekend of football. Confusing stuff. We'll get a little bit more into that, and we'll talk some Thabo Sefolosha and the Atlanta Hawks as basketball season nears. Here on Clutch with Keon Rose, next.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. It's Rick Davis Golden Diamonds half-off remounting party going on right now. Rick Davis Golden Diamonds half-off remounting party is an affordable way to revitalize your jewelry. Don't miss the party going on today at Rick Davis half-off remounting party. Give your diamond ring a fresh new look or a new design, as Rick's Golden Diamonds will fix it quickly, or maybe even while you wait. Rick Davis Golden Diamonds, 40 years of service, 5301 Brainerd Road, 5301 Brainerd Road. Call 580-2587, 580-2587 for Rick Davis Golden Diamonds, an affordable way to revitalize your jewelry. The half-off party's going on today, so don't miss it at Rick Davis Golden Diamonds. Rick Davis Golden Diamonds, 5301 Brainerd Road. Call 580-2587. Rick Davis Golden Diamonds.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
That smells so good. Smells like a big Italian dinner. But you're going to walk out with two. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. 2 pizzas. You got the two for the price of one at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. My favorite Italian restaurant of all the time. Now, I'm living in Hicks, and I go to Raphael's right down the street in Hicks and Pike, right near Highland Plaza. You're in Saudi Daisy? Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria in Saudi Daisy. Just next to Saudi Daisy Church of God. Hey, you're on Signal Mountain. There's a Raphael's Italian Restaurant and a Pizzeria. It's right on the main drag. You're going to love the pasta, the pizza. Buy one hot pizza, get a one for free. 2 pizzas. You got the two for the price of one at Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Tastes so good. Bring the whole family. Come on, Raphael's Italian Restaurant and Pizzeria. Mangia. Salute.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. Did you know that a quarter of the world's population will experience mental illness? My guest this week is former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, who says the United Nations must make mental illness a priority. Find out why this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
And before we get into the Atlanta Hawks and before we get into Thabo Sefolosha specifically, This is a good time to mention that in that entire 15-minute segment, that last segment that I just spent blithering about how I don't understand anything in the world of football because it does it just does crazy things and it makes no sense. I somehow failed to mention that the Bulldogs beat Missouri 9-6, and that is probably the most perplexing thing that happened. Like, out of all the what are the Colts doing? And Michigan just lost on the flukiest punt block of ever. I like all of that. All of that is fine and dandy, but I think an underrated story of this weekend is what the heck just happened to Georgia playing Missouri. Why couldn't Georgia score points? And why did Georgia have their first win in 20 years without a touchdown? I don't understand that game at all. There were no touchdowns scored in that game. I wish that I could tell you what happened. And not only that, but you've got Marshall Morgan, the kicker, who basically made a dog out of himself, no pun intended, and then redeemed himself in probably the most odd way ever. Maybe not ever, but like in a very odd way. And this goes to show you that all kicks are not created equal. Simply because one kick is closer than another kick doesn't make it an easier kick, apparently. Because Morgan missed a 26-yarder, and then 4 minutes later, in order to get the win and to give Georgia the lead, the 9-6 lead, he kicked a 34-yarder with about 1 minute and 44 to go. And this is Georgia's first win without scoring a touchdown since their 12-3 victory over Kentucky in 1995. And this is a team in Georgia that can really score. And this is Missouri we're talking about. We're not talking about like juggernauts here. We're not talking about this brilliant defensive unit here with the Missouri Tigers. And we're also not talking about a squad that's going to beat you just by possessing the ball for an eternity either. I don't know how that game works. And I saw some of it. Like, I was watching it and I didn't understand how that was working. Like, the machinations of all of that game made none sense to me. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose. I'd like to talk Bulldogs with you, but that game was frustrating and just not a good game even. And thus, like, further proving that we know nothing, especially when it comes to the SEC. Like, I don't know who can predict what happens in this conference of football. It's a weird league because it's oddly stacked, and then you've just got teams that have these rock, paper, scissors advantages over each other. I wish I could tell you on a week-to-week basis. I'm learning the SEC more and more as I've been living here, and it's been a joy to watch for sure, but it's one of those things I just got to stand back and let it happen. Because, like, there are just rules that you follow in certain leagues. The Big Ten is all power. You're the powerful team, you usually win. Michigan State aside. You're the strong team, you win. If you're the weak team, you lose. In the Big 12, it's let's score lots of points. You're the team that has the most firepower, you win. And I would say the Pac-12 is even more so like that. The team with the most firepower offensively tends to win in those games. We don't necessarily have that in the SEC. There's a little bit more diversity in playing styles in the SEC. And so I never know exactly how certain teams match up to each other until after the game's over. Then you can go, oh yeah, this is where Georgia should have been better than Missouri. This is how they ended up winning this game. The only problem is, of course, that because no touchdowns were actually scored in this game, and this was a game that was a field possession battle, those are a little trickier to decipher and also just less interesting to talk about. It just as a whole, really. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Search Hot News Talk Radio. And if you want to listen to us on your phone, your mobile device, you've got an iPhone, go to the Apple Store. You've got an Android device. What are they on? The S6 now for Samsung, LG, whatever you've got. Android device, go to the Google Play Store. search the TuneIn Radio app. It is absolutely free. Search Hot News Talk Radio, give us a follow and press play, and you'll have Hot News Talk Radio wherever you go. The Atlanta Hawks, as basketball season gets closer, the Atlanta Hawks, of course, won 66 games last season, and they're going to be exciting. The Eastern Conference is the weaker of the two conferences in the NBA, and it's going to be exciting because they return mostly everybody. I think they lose Damari Carroll. He goes to Toronto to be a Raptor, but otherwise, the Hawks are just as good as they were last year and may have upgraded at points. And I really like the way that this team looks with regards to being able to compete for an NBA Finals. They're probably going to be able to be number one in the Eastern Conference again, if you really think about it. I think Cleveland has LeBron, and that makes them the more viable candidate, but they're starting the season injured. The Cavs are. And so I like the Hawks here to really repeat as having the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, which puts them at a huge advantage come postseason time. I don't know if people thought that what the Hawks did last year was a fluke, but 66 games is not an accident. You cannot accidentally win 66 games in the NBA. Yes, even in the Eastern Conference, because you still have to play enough Western Conference teams to make you look bad. And the Hawks did feast on the Eastern Conference. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that they didn't. But 66 wins is still a lot of wins to have, even if you are just pretty good. So, I mean, the Hawks aren't just pretty good. The Hawks are really good. I really like their ability to stretch the floor as a shooting team. They're more of a motion offense like what you see in San Antonio with the Spurs, which is a credit to Coach Budenholzer and how he's just taken those philosophies from San Antonio. I mean, he didn't really change a ton. He just found guys to be the players that the Spurs had. Teague is his Parker. Teague doesn't play necessarily exactly like him, but Teague is able to get to the basket. He's quick. He's got a great first step, can shoot the mid-range shot incredibly well. Teague's probably a better three-point shooter than Parker also. I like this Hawks team a lot, and I think that they're not getting the credit they deserve, at least not nationally, because of how they don't have any real stars on the team. They had 4 All-Stars last year, and Coach Budenholzer was the coach of the year. But they don't have superstars. There's not that transcendent Kevin Durant, LeBron James, James Harden type guy in Atlanta. So when they were winning all of those games, it was perplexing to people. And the thing is, the Hawks faltered in the playoffs, had a little bit of a struggle there against the Wizards, and at least at a certain point in that series before ultimately pulling away and winning it. And then they struggled against Cleveland. But I mean, look at who they didn't have. No Cephalosha, and we'll talk a little bit about him later. No Cephalosha because his leg was broken by the police in New York. No Korver eventually when he went down. Banged up Damari Carroll. And they made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. And before LeBron really turned it on, they made that series look interesting. Why don't the Hawks get that respect? It's not like they're not playing flashy basketball. The way that they play is exciting to watch. It's thrilling. Guys are slashing to the basket. There's a lot of dunks. There's a lot of three-point shots. There's a lot of running. It's not like, those old 2007 Spurs teams where it was just grinded out defense. No disrespect to the San Antonio Spurs of 2007. That's one of the great basketball teams probably in the history of ever. Boring basketball to watch. Absolutely dreadfully boring. They didn't score hardly ever. This Hawks team is not that. They score a lot. Okay, they're going to be a team that's up in the hundreds nightly, even hitting 120 fairly regularly, I believe. Because you've got those big guys with Horford down there, and Horford is able to stretch the floor, and there's just so much room for cutters. Horford and Millsap. Like, they can play around the basket. They can spread out. And then I love the upgrade of bringing in Tiago Splitter from San Antonio to help this team. I really do. Budenholzer coached Splitter already. He knows how he works. And Tiago gives you legitimate size to protect the rim and to score against other teams' big guys, which they did not have last year, which is why, honestly, they got bullied around by Cleveland down low in the playoffs. And I see them running into Cleveland again this year. There's only like 3 teams in the Eastern Conference worth watching. It's Cleveland, it's Washington, it's Atlanta. I don't really care about Chicago. Chicago is fake good to me. I don't see them as a real good team. I see them as a fake good team. And I don't think they match up well against the Hawks. The Hawks, offensively, one of the league leaders. Defensively, one of the league leaders. The only problem that the Hawks had last year, rebounding. They were 27th in the league in rebounding percentage. And I don't see that being a repeat because that's what you brought in Splitter for. I mean, when you bring in a huge guy, sure, Splitter gives you a lot of things. He gives you that extra hustle. He's going to give you some nice points around the basket. He's going to be able to help you defend against the Timofey Mozgovs of the world. But you really just brought him in to just be large. And one of the things about being large, if someone is actually good at doing so, is rebounding. I think the Hawks get a huge boost in rebounding. And I think that maybe they don't win 66 games again, but if they win 59, 60, that's not shocking. And that's not out of the realm of possibility for them. They look good. I think their biggest weakness is being covered up now. And I think, yes, okay, they lose a lot with Damari Carroll, but I don't know that they lose so much that this team is gone. You know what I mean? The team is not built to have any one superstar on it anyhow. And Damari Carroll was not that. Now you got to see it play out on the court. You have to see it play out, right? Because you see a key guy move somewhere else. He was a guy that got a lot of the gears moving for this Hawks team. And you don't know, I think, truly how much you needed him until you're tested without him. And this is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I don't know how much you lose of Damari Carroll until you're tested without him. And I'm not saying you can just replace him with anybody, but I don't think that the way the Hawks are designed, their production is completely falling off a cliff because Damari Carroll is gone. It's not the same thing as the Thunder losing a Durant or the Thunder losing a Westbrook. Those two guys are superstars. One loses the other, and they're talented enough to keep afloat. But let's be honest here, that team relies on superstars. Atlanta doesn't. They do not need a superstar. Not in this system and not with those guys. You've got a bunch, instead of having 2 transcendent guys, you've got a bunch of really good guys. So you're just plug and play in a lot of situations. And analytically, you keep the ball moving around. You get yourself a lot of nice shots. And you've got Korver. And Korver does something that a lot of players can't do, which is when the ball is in his hands, he's a deadly threat from outside. And when the ball is not in his hands, he's warping the defense. You have to account for Korver. You have to. That makes him deadly. And you know who else comes back? Thabo Sefolosha. And we'll talk about him a little bit next segment here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. But legitimately, Thabo Sefolosha is one of the most important Atlanta Hawks because of the defense that he gives. That you are basically telling Thabo Sefolosha, guard the other team's best guy, and he makes him disappear. It's like the Revis Island of basketball. Thabo can erase a guy. He can erase a player which is going to be good. You know, you run into Washington. Do you want to make Bradley Beal disappear or not? The answer to that question is yes. Yes, you do. And he can do that for you. And he was not even playing for them last season. He makes it in the postseason, and they make it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. That production from Thabo Sefolosha, plus he can shoot corner threes, helps you in fast break situations also. He was missed. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Social media, we're on that. Hot News Talk Radio on Facebook, at Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter. Download the TuneIn app and follow us anywhere at any time. AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
The Atlanta Hawks return Thabo Sefolosha. He's back to start this NBA season after missing the postseason because he had a broken leg. How did Thabo Sefolosha wind up with a broken leg? Well, I'll tell you how he wound up with a broken leg. If you haven't heard this story already, it's because it's not really getting the coverage that it ought to get, which is insane. If you haven't heard this story, this is the kind of story where I say, if you haven't heard this story already, you've been living under a rock. Except you might not have been. This story is really not getting covered very well at all. And the only times that I hear it getting covered is when people talk about how little coverage the story is getting. Like that's the story. The fact that the story is not getting covered. That is the story. This story that involves the police, which we love to talk about, and race, which we love to talk about, and fame. We got an NBA athlete involved, and it's in a big city, happened in New York, and the athlete involved has a legitimate case against the police. He could have taken what he was arrested for. He could have taken the charges, okay, just shelled out the money, settled. He chose to fight it. The police side of this issue is not looking good. How on earth are we not talking about this more? Like, how on earth is this not a topic every single day on like every show, but especially in this area? Atlanta's right down the road. What is this? There's nothing. I'm looking for stuff on this story. I just Googled Thabo Sefolosha as the beginning of my research. Like before I go into anything deep, I simply Googled Thabo Sefolosha, and I got the story of when Thabo Sefolosha's leg was first broken, the article that was written in April. The case is happening now. He's in court right now. And I think our coverage of this, especially us in the sports media, has been kind of deplorable. And I'm not any exception. I started the show talking about how crazy football is and how I don't understand it. This is the more important story. But that's not what we want to hear. It's harder to listen to. It's an interesting thing to listen to. It's got the interest factor, but it doesn't have the desirability factor. The stance that you can take on this is not, it doesn't feel as pivotal as the stance that you can take on Ferguson or on the Baltimore riots or in the case of Eric Gray. It doesn't have that same where do we take this stance. We had a debate here in the station last week Wednesday after my show. It was I and David Tulis and Russell and Mr. Judd and Confederate Mike and all of the people here at the station. There was a Red Bank police officer who's being indicted right now for beating up an illegal immigrant in this country, but he was pulled out of a police car and essentially beaten up. And we had a debate about that. And I think the reason why you're able to have a debate about that is because there is some pivotal thing that says about you, that debate, that being inside of a conversation that's that charged says about you. And because, this is just a guess of mine, I don't know, but because Thabo Sefolosha is not American, okay, he is quote unquote black, but he's not American. We don't know what that says. And we've had a lot of issues with the police and police shootings this year, and we've had a lot of discussions about those things, but we don't know what this Sefolosha situation says about us. And so we're either not as enthused or we're not as willing to have this conversation. I'm going to go with enthused/interested. I don't think we're as interested. Because if the media thought that we were interested, they'd cover it. If the media thought that this is a story that would have a lot of eyeballs on it, they'd cover it. And you know how I know this? Because last night, Sunday Night Football, the rematch of the Deflategate game, and we talked about Deflategate all year. The moment that story broke to Tom Brady's ruling, we talked about that story all year because the media thought that that's what we wanted to hear, and that's what we got. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. We're talking about Thabo Sefolosha's case and why it's not being discussed. At least not being discussed to the level that it should be, as often as it should be discussed. Like we're not talking about, okay, a scrub here. Yes, Thabo Sefolosha isn't a superstar. Yes, Thabo Sefolosha is a role player, but he's a role player on a very good team. And when his leg was broken, that team needed him. And that team made a playoff run. And you can't help but imagine how much further the Atlanta Hawks could have been able to go if they had Thabo Sefolosha, who is able to defend the best players in this league. And that the other team had this guy named LeBron James. And that the Hawks really couldn't defend him at all. That should be a pretty big story. We're like 1 degree away from LeBron James. And we can't get anybody to talk about this story, except to talk about that we're not talking about this story. That's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Like there's updates on Thabo Sefolosha. Like if you want to find out about the story, you can. I'm not saying that it's being buried or that there's some conspiracy out there to stop us from learning about Thabo Sefolosha. It's being reported on, but nobody's making a big stink about it. Like the stories are there if you look for them. Thabo Sefolosha started dunking again, which means his leg is fine enough for him to start playing and he can take contact in practice and all of those things. We just can't find the story readily. Like the story ought to find us. Like Deflategate found us, and I don't know about some of you, but I was fed up with the story. Like, I was tired of hearing about the story, and the story went out of its way to find me. I was hearing about Deflategate every other day. Deflategate on ESPN, Deflategate on Fox, the Deflategate on Yahoo. I go in to check my emails, and there's Deflategate. I can't hide from this. And that story does not matter, not even 1/10 as much as when a police officer, because police officers are people who are sworn to protect us, when a police officer oversteps his bounds and breaks the leg of somebody who is not armed. Then they still detain him. Then they ask him to accept the charges, and the police story is not adding up at all. I mean, let me read you a little bit of this article written by Kevin Arnovitz of ESPN. An investigation by the Civilian Complaint Review Board, an independent governmental agency in New York that evaluates police conduct, has regained momentum after the acquittal of Atlanta Hawks forward Thabo Sefolosha. Sources close to the case said on Friday, in an incident with officers on April 8th outside of One Oak, a Manhattan nightclub, Sefolosha suffered a broken leg. An injury, he said, came at the hands of the arresting officers. On October 9th, a jury acquitted Sefolosha of misdemeanor charges of obstructing government administration, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. In the criminal trial, the prosecution asserted that Sefolosha ignored orders from police to leave the area around a crime scene where Chris Copeland, then a forward of the Indiana Pacers, was stabbed. The prosecution case stated that Sefolosha charged one of the arresting officers. Sefolosha testified that he obeyed the orders, though he called a combative officer at the scene a midget. Sefolosha said he was grabbed by several officers and pulled to the ground as he stopped to hand money to a panhandler. So the police story was that he charged the officers and that he said all of, he was basically uncooperative, and that's why they had to take him down, and that's why his leg got broken. And Thabo Sefolosha is innocent, or at least he says he's innocent, and that he wants to be vindicated for that. And I think the fact that Tabo's going to court against it tells you that he thinks he's got a pretty good shot. It looks like he's got a pretty good shot. I'm not saying that means that he's innocent, but when it looks real hard, when it looks difficult to do, guys with this amount of money typically just settle out of court. You think back to the Kobe Bryant rape case back in Colorado. Doesn't mean that Kobe Bryant was guilty that he settled out of court. It just looked like it was going to be a headache. And Kobe was like, yeah, no. I'm not going to fight it. This is a huge headache. Just take the money. Thabo could have settled this out of court. He chose to take it head on. He chose to take on the headache of what that is. And he has a case. Quote, he had a criminal case, and we had to respect that, Robert said during a question and answer session at the ESPNW Women in Sports Summit in Dana Point, California. He now has a civil litigation if he wants to pursue it. I can't tell you how horrific the experience he had was. It was just dreadful. So he's been acquitted of that, of what was charged against him. And now that he's been acquitted, he can go after it if he wants to. And I think he will. And what that means for police relations in America, that ought to be a serious conversation we're all having. That, yeah, a guy can be brought down by police and have his leg broken in a few places, and the police officers try and write a report that doesn't fit what actually happened, even down to them saying that he said that he was injured when he got there. No, who does? That's not even a thing. I don't even know what that is. There's more things. I don't believe there's been an episode of this show where I have said more often than I have today that I don't even know what that is. But there's just been a lot of perplexing things. That's probably the biggest one. That nobody would ever tell you that. That if my leg were already broken and somebody ran into me, I'm milking that one. That's just me, though. That's just me. Maybe, person with a more upstanding person with more with more character might not do that, but I would milk that one. I would. But the fact that the police can do that and try and write a report that doesn't match up and are actually getting caught, I can't believe that this is not a story that we're going through more. It has to be. It completely matters. Our relationship with the police, the people sworn to protect us, and whom I have a lot of respect for, this not being an actual conversation, this is not being a real discussed about topic from the people who are supposed to be having these conversations. We would rather talk about Deflategate. And we're going to get all up in arms about whether or not Tom Brady cheated or not. And that doesn't even matter. Football is a game. What Thabo Sefolosha lived is in a real life situation with police in a real life place. Which means that if it could happen to him, and drum roll please, it could happen to you. You could end up in an encounter with the police where there's a misunderstanding that gets you injured. What that means something for you. That yes, you're as nice as you can possibly be. You comply with what they're saying. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. And you still wind up with your leg broken. It's not good. This is AM 1240. Hot News Talk Radio. You've been listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. You can find us on the TuneIn Radio app. Simply search the Apple Store or the Google Play Store for those of you with Android mobile devices. Search Hot News Talk Radio. Press play. Give us a follow and you'll have Hot News Talk Radio wherever you go. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in 23 hours.
Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, and myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. Hot News Talk 1240.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor, Patrick Neal, in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
Compass Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, and myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world. Hot News Talk 1240. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT